Exeter, Rhode Island, in the late 19th century was a picturesque farming community surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests. Its isolation from urban centers gave it an air of tranquility, but it also left its residents vulnerable to fear and superstition. Life in Exeter was simple. Families worked the land, attended church on Sundays, and relied on one another during hard times. Yet, beneath this peaceful exterior, a silent killer was spreading through the region. Tuberculosis, or consumption as it was then known, had become an epidemic. Its symptoms were horrifying. Sufferers grew pale and gaunt, coughed up blood, and wasted away as though their very life force was being drained. For the people of Exeter, this mysterious illness seemed almost supernatural. When the Brown family became its latest victims, whispers of something far darker began to circulate, a force that could not be explained by medicine alone. The Brown family had always been well regarded in Exeter. George Brown was a hard-working farmer who provided for his wife Mary Eliza and their 4 children, Mary Olive, Edwin, Mercy Lena, and a younger son who remains unnamed in historical records. They were a close-knit family, bound by faith and resilience. But their idyllic life began to unravel in 1883 when Mary Eliza fell ill with tuberculosis. Her decline was slow and agonizing. She became bedridden, her once vibrant spirit crushed under the weight of the disease. George did everything he could to care for her, but there was no cure. When she passed away, it left a void in the family that could never be filled. Tragedy struck again just a few years later when Mary Olive, their eldest daughter, also succumbed to consumption at the age of 20. Her death devastated the Browns and left George clinging to hope that his remaining children would be spared. But fate had other plans. By 1891, tuberculosis had claimed 2 members of the Brown family, but it wasn't finished yet. Edwin Brown, George's only son and once a picture of health, began showing signs of illness. He grew pale and weak, his energy drained as if by an unseen force. Desperate to save him, George sent Edwin west to Colorado Springs, a destination known for its clean air and supposed healing properties for those with tuberculosis. For a time, Edwin seemed to improve in the dry mountain climate. But his recovery was short-lived. He returned home weaker than ever before. Around this same time, Mercy Lena Brown, the youngest daughter, fell ill as well. Unlike her mother and sister, whose declines had been gradual, Mercy's illness struck with alarming speed. Within weeks, she was dead at just 19 years old. Mercy Lena Brown's death in January 1892 shocked the town of Exeter. She had always been known for her beauty and vitality, a bright light in her family's darkening world. Her sudden passing seemed almost unnatural compared to the slow progression of tuberculosis that had claimed her mother and sister. Due to the frozen winter ground making burial impossible, Mercy's body was placed in a temporary above-ground crypt at Chestnut Hill Cemetery until springtime thaw would allow for proper interment. This detail would later become central to one of America's most infamous vampire legends. As George mourned the loss of his youngest daughter, his son Edwin's condition grew worse by the day. He could barely walk without assistance. His once strong frame had withered to skin and bones. Local doctors tried every remedy they knew, herbal tonics, rest cures, but nothing worked. Edwin coughed up blood into handkerchiefs that were stained crimson by morning light. His breathing became labored as if something unseen was pressing down on his chest. George watched helplessly as his only son slipped closer to death with each passing day. The people of Exeter were no strangers to tragedy. Many families had lost loved ones to tuberculosis over the years. But something about the Brown family's plight felt different, unnatural even. Whispers began circulating among neighbors that one of George's deceased relatives might be responsible for Edwin's decline. According to local folklore rooted in old European traditions brought over by settlers centuries earlier, vampires could rise from their graves to drain life from their living kin. The townsfolk believed they knew what needed to be done. They must exhume the bodies of Mary Eliza, Mary Olive, and Mercy Lena Brown to determine whether one of them was a vampire. On March 17, 1892, a cold and overcast day, a group of townsmen gathered at Chestnut Hill Cemetery armed with shovels and lanterns. George Brown reluctantly agreed to let them proceed. Though skeptical himself about vampires' existence, he could no longer ignore his neighbor's insistence, or his own desperation to save Edwin at any cost. They began by digging up Mary Brown's grave first. After nearly 9 years underground, her remains were skeletal, showing no signs suggesting vampirism according to local lore, such as fresh blood or lack decomposition. Next came Mary Olive's grave. Though less decayed than her mother due shorter burial time, neither showed anything unusual, either leaving only Mercy left unexplored, crypt awaiting inspection ominously nearby. As the townsmen completed their grim ritual, burning Mercy's heart and liver atop a cold stone and mixing the ashes into a tonic for Edwin, they believed they had done everything in their power to break the curse. The flames crackled in the eerie silence of the cemetery, their faces illuminated by the firelight as they whispered prayers and incantations. The tonic, a grotesque concoction born of desperation and superstition, was given to Edwin in the hope that it would save his life. But despite their efforts, Edwin Brown succumbed to tuberculosis just 2 months later, leaving George Brown utterly alone, his wife and all of his children now gone. The story of Mercy Brown might have ended there, but its echoes would ripple far beyond Exeter. News of the exhumation spread quickly, with newspapers sensationalizing the tale of the Vampire of Exeter. For some, it was a chilling reminder of how fear and superstition could take hold of even the most rational minds. For others, it was proof that perhaps there were forces at work beyond human understanding. Mercy's name became synonymous with America's vampire folklore, her grave at Chestnut Hill Cemetery drawing curious visitors and paranormal enthusiasts to this day. But what truly happened to Mercy Lena Brown? Was she an innocent victim of disease and grief twisted into legend by a desperate community? Or was there something darker lurking in the shadows, something that science could not explain? Even now, over a century later, her story continues to haunt us. Visitors to her resting place report strange occurrences, whispers carried on the wind, sudden chills in the air, or an unshakable feeling of being watched. Could it be that Mercy's spirit lingers still, tethered to a world that refused to let her rest? As we close this chapter on one of America's most infamous vampire legends, we're left with more questions than answers. The tale of Mercy Brown is not just a story about death, it's a story about fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of losing those we love. And fear of what might lie beyond the veil of death. Whether you believe in vampires or not, one thing is certain: Mercy Brown's story will continue to captivate and terrify for generations to come. So next time you find yourself walking through an old cemetery or reading about unexplained phenomena, remember this: sometimes the scariest stories are not those we can prove, but those we can't disprove. And as for Mercy Brown, perhaps she's still out there somewhere, waiting. Asterisk, what do you think? Was Mercy Brown truly a vampire, or just an innocent girl caught in the grip of hysteria? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales like this one.